Hey guys, how are you? This is Ishai Breslauer, your host of the CRE Shark Eye Show. I hope you guys are doing great today. We have a unique profession within the real estate industry, someone who helps other people to get their, I would say, career to fly, to bloom, call it whatever you want. His name is Jim McGuffin, and I have the honor and the pleasure of having him. Jim, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I look forward to the discussion.
Same here. And you know what? Before we dig into your story and how you chose this profession and why you went for it and all the people that you help, etc., just give us a 2-minute elevator pitch of what your business is about, what you are. Love to hear. Go ahead.
Yep. Hirewell is a search firm. We have at last count about 90 recruiters and growing. I lead our real estate team here at Hirewell, of which there are 7 recruiters. What we specialize in at Hirewell is commercial real estate. Now, that's a very large umbrella. We will do searches in every asset class from industrial to multifamily, even niches like self-storage or senior housing. We will do searches across the country. And in short, if it's a position that relates to real estate, we do that search. And it's important to keep in mind about 1/4 of our business is at the C-suite or equivalent. I do have a team that helps me with the sort of the lower quarter of our business with probably a 3 to 5 year person, a high 5-figure, low 6-figure person, property managers, analysts, things of that nature, project managers. But the core of our business, the middle half, is that vice president to senior vice president, director to managing director, 6-figure jobs in commercial real estate across the country. That's us in 2 minutes or less.
Sounds fantastic. I'm excited to this discussion. I have so much to ask already. So it sounds amazing. Tell me something. How did you choose to get into this?
Well, I'm actually on my 3rd career of 3, the one that'll last. And if you are not connected with me on LinkedIn or following me on LinkedIn, Jim McGuffin with Hirewell, you'll see that I'm on my 3rd career. For the first 10 years of my career, I was at the Chicago Board of Trade and the options exchange across the street, working in the financial markets, commodity markets, financial markets, doing the open outcry trading that is now extinct. That was career 1, and really was a childhood passion of mine. Ever since I realized as a kid I could go someplace and yell at people all day in my 20s and make a decent living, I figured that's for me. Sign me up. I was too young with too much energy to sit at a desk. Second career I had after I left the trading floor, I actually wanted to polish up on my studies and pursue my MBA. Because on the trading floor, you learn a lot of skills that aren't really translatable. And that's one of the things maybe we'll talk about on this call when I talk to candidates about marketable and translatable skills. But the things I could do from the trading floor, which was analysis, real quick math in my head, feel for a market, things of that nature, wasn't really a lot of demand in the market for. So knowing that, I went back proactively, got my MBA, and while I was getting my MBA, I worked for the athletic department at my university, at my alma mater, doing fundraising for capital projects, stadiums, and alike, and our scholarship program, all in athletics. And you can see my football helmet there. I'm a big sports fan.
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun.
Good timing, Super Bowl timing.
Yeah, that's right. But when you work in college athletics, there are very few people that are making a sustainable living, and it's just not a long-term career. So the reason why I got into recruiting, and I'm making a long answer out of a short one, was because it's a field where I was able to combine my analytical skills, my attention to detail that I learned on the trading floor, with my 5 or 6 years in fundraising, where you learn how to listen and you learn what's your donor trying to achieve, how are they connected with the university, what touch point is going to help them connect with the university and ultimately make that donation. So when I was evaluating my options, I thought recruiting was a real good combination of listening, both hearing what the client companies want or what someone who's a candidate wants, and then combining that analytical fit where on the trading floor, you're trying to put pieces together and match equations and be predictive with what's happening in the market. And I found that in recruiting, and I've been doing recruiting now for 9 years.
You know what? It's so exciting to hear, people who change career paths, and we can relate because I was a teacher for like 13 years, then went into real estate and did this whole change. And I'm hearing you, and you had like 3 stops. It's exciting. And I'm not going to tell anyone, but you have, meaning the people who are not watching, that are listening to the, audio medium. Jim has sort of grayish hair, and
Right.
I'm sure we are, meaning, I don't know how old I look to you, but I'm about 48 years old, close to 49.
I am exactly 48 years old.
So we talk the same language. We're not kids anymore. And we know what it means to change and shift and move and pivot, pivot on all that stuff. The one thing I want to ask you, which is something that is screaming out of your career, because a guy who did so much and went to finance and then did all that stuff and then finally found himself in recruiting, I think that real estate would not be the first place to go. Meaning, I would imagine that you would go to the whole finance world, capital markets, right? People who work in the Morgan Stanleys and the Barclays and those places, and not necessarily the real estate. So meaning, I'm really curious to hear how you got into real estate.
Well, the basis of real estate is always finance, and whether you're moving hard currencies or stocks and equities like I did in career number 1, or a hard product in real estate, I think it's completely translatable and understandable. And I'd also say with real estate, the temptation for me has always been to be involved with something tangible. Because in my career at the trading floor, I did not only futures, but also options. So, an option is even a higher level thinking about a synthetic product that really doesn't exist. So having done that for 10 years, I was always tempted to get into real estate, kind of like the way people are tempted to get into construction and development, so they can see and feel and touch
building
the product of their labor. And I think for me, real estate was always a sector that I saw as tempting because of the solid nature of it. And I also, when I evaluated the marketplace, I realized that there were only so many niche real estate recruiters out there. And I'm a real big believer in recruiting that you have to be a niche player. We often get asked, my team and I get asked to do things outside of our sector. Most of the times we say no, sometimes reluctantly because of a relationship, we'll say yes. But I believe that staying in your lane, if you will, makes for the best service that you can provide to your clients, which is why we stay just in commercial real estate.
It's a beautiful focus, and I love the aspect of focus, which you can learn to other obviously aspects in businesses. Say, stay in your lane, stay focused, and be professional where you are. Make the relationships in this field. But we all know that commercial real estate is like its whole own world. Being in commercial real estate, it's an isolated type of market. Not anymore so much with a relationship to tech. Obviously, it's relation to finance, but real estate people are real estate people. It's like it's a known thing, and especially in commercial real estate, because residential, it's a whole world of residential brokers who are selling these single-family homes and condos, and people who sell condos, etc. Whatever it is, commercial real estate is its own world. It's its own niche. And getting into it is not an easy thing. You have to understand, obviously you have to understand numbers, but you have to understand this certain lingo, the certain type of ins and outs, a certain type of networking that they have, the events that they go to. Obviously, COVID was very, very different within that format, but still, it's a whole world of its own. So the question from me to you is, you got into real estate, you have to create relationships from scratch pretty much because it's its own world. Can you tell us how you did that?
It's just time and trust is how we've always built relationships. And I also think that whether you're a real estate developer or a recruiter, you have to start small. So stick with searches at your focus point and at your job level. And frankly, when I began the business, I did a large number of searches as property management searches, asset management searches, lower level. But as you build that credibility, and you kind of take candidates through their career. As I've been doing this now 9 years, I've seen so many folks that I used to interview for a position here, and now they're here, and I'm kind of walking these people through their career and keeping them in my database and keeping those relationships alive and going. But I would say, like anything else, it's about starting small, staying focused, and really treating, not to be cliche, but each client like they're your most important client. And then word of mouth will spread in the way that we market really has been advantageous to us. And we market a little bit differently than our competitors, or frankly, maybe a lot differently than our competitors. And your reputation just precedes you. But I think you have to take incremental growth is how we've got successful, my team and I.
You know something, when I think about what you guys do and the relationship to the market, you have your job is could be very, very different from day to day, obviously. And I want to hear mostly about the types of companies that you work with, because, in some companies could be a family office. They need someone to help them run the show or whatever it is, more of a general type of a thing. And in some companies, it's like a major corporations. They need that box. They need that analyst, that person. So can you explain to us how the market is? Meaning, obviously, you already, meaning a person like you have the understanding of what type of companies are out there, what type of professions they need, what type of people they need in their companies.
Yeah. Well, if I'm understanding your question correctly, our typical client would be a medium to large sized, privately held real estate owner, operator, or developer. Now, that being said, that's just our typical client. We have clients that we service that are large, publicly held, and across the country. We do business for groups like that. Then we also have on the other extreme, we'll do businesses for family offices or investment platforms that have no more than a dozen employees there. And I would say this in terms of your question about the differences between those or the specification between those. I go with the adage of this: the larger a place, the more specialist that they want, the absolute height of achievement, but in that niche.
Very specific field, yeah.
Yeah, the smaller the shop, the more multiple hats they like people to wear. I'm doing one search right now where we're kind of looking for a COO, CFO type that has some asset management background and basically everything except an operational accountant. They don't need that, but they need those 3 or 4 different ventures, and that's from a family office that is going to have between 12 and 15 people working at it. And then we do, on the other extreme, we have a recurring relationship with Walker and Dunlop. We, at any given time, we're working a handful of searches for them. They're going to want a specific, specific product type, maybe a HUD underwriter specific. So when I do searches for Walker and Dunlop, we're trying to hit very, very tight needle points, if you will, on a specific candidate, where my family office clients might say, well, it's great that the person has done some development, but also done some asset management. And this, we like all that, bring them to us. So that's the difference in my scope and why the first step is beginning to understand what our clients want and what they need.
That's beautiful. And that's a lot of relationships basically to juggle around between a lot of people, a lot of types. Within the asset classes, especially with what, the market had been, we saw what happened the last couple of years with the shift. And you just say yourself, commercial real estate is a big world. You have industrial, which is flying high. You have multifamily, which was proven to be the most resilient asset class. And then you have, and also self-storage. But then you have obviously the retail area, the retail world and the office world, which is more fragile, obviously the hospitality world. And what did you see when it came to hiring people to come into businesses and people looking for jobs within the asset classes? Can you tell us a little bit from your perspective, what happened?
Yeah, great question. There's a real imbalance, and I get asked this question probably a dozen times a day when I'm talking to candidates about what I see in the marketplace and level of activity and demand in the marketplace. And I give a very evasive answer. It depends. There are asset classes you mentioned, industrial, multifamily, self-storage as a niche, single-family home for rent as a niche. Those four asset classes probably represent 90% of our business right now. We have a couple searches in retail, a couple in mixed use, a couple, maybe one in office, but 90% are those four things. So the answer I'll give is if you're in one of those four asset classes, and if you're in a particular part of the country that's active right now, and for us, same thing, across the Sun Belt, Texas over through the Carolinas down through Florida, that's probably 75% of our business right now.
Wow.
And we're not unique. We go where the business goes. We're a national search firm. I mean, we are working searches in Southern California. We do have them in New York, Seattle. We have one on the Hawaiian Islands, a little bit unique right now. But we go where the business goes. And the very short answer, not to be evasive, is it depends. If you're in this asset class, in this location, there is imbalance to demand for candidates being way above availability of candidates. Then if you're in different asset class or a different location, it's inverted. You mentioned office, you mentioned retail. Those are typically niches where we see more candidates available than there are jobs. So it depends.
That's so interesting. Different companies have different locations. Commercial real estate is it's really different between. I'll try to explain my question. I know where I'm going. I'm just going to try to restructure it in a really clear way. You have two types, I would say, of real estate companies. One is the GP part, right? The general partner, the sponsor, the leader, the developer, the operator, those guys. And they are very focused on an area for the most part. For the most part, I'm not talking about retail operators who are all over nationwide, et cetera. And you have those who are nationwide, but they are, for the most part, more focused in a certain area. Their office is based in a very certain area that is usually, not always, but usually not too far from where their assets, located. And then you have those who you probably recruit also to those guys who are more LP focused, like they are funds, they are private equity, those type of guys. And they will be more spread out. They could have an office in New York, but their whole entire activity could be in the South, somewhere else. I don't know. So could you tell us about that and what their requirements in terms of the people that they want and the locations that they are, et cetera, and what type of skills you see, the difference of skills that they want, meaning what differentiates those guys?
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. And we're working searches now for both of those pools. We do have a GP client, and yeah, I would agree that they're typically more regional. They do want to be closer to their assets. They find a place in an area that they're comfortable in, an asset class that they're comfortable in, and there's some amount of replication of their assets, and they try to move 50 miles over and try the same thing again. And then we do have a number of LP or funds. We're working with a fund right now in self-storage that I sat in their office about 2 weeks ago. We went over their slide deck for investors, and I looked at where all their future development projects are going to be. And you're right, national. They are east, west, north, south, and all points in between. So I agree with that. It is hard to say, though, that there's any one hard and fast rule as a job seeker, knowing where to look or where the appeal is going to be, I would say that every client is different and every candidate profile and preference is different, which is why the first thing that we do as recruiters, once we are retained to begin a search and once we've signed off on the shared job description that we as recruiters understand what the client's looking for, we kick off every search with about a 30-minute kickoff call where we ask all the stakeholders, whether it's a hiring manager or people working along with this person, is to sit down with us for a half hour. We just concluded one of these this morning. Tell us what you really want and tell us what the candidate profile looks like, what sort of portfolios you want the person to come from, what sort of institutions. Are there best practices from places that you would love to integrate into your culture? Are there, unfortunately, practices from places you don't want to integrate to your culture? And my purpose of telling that story or sharing that story is every search is different. And you may look at a job description, whether you're applying online, if it's someone from the candidate pool is looking at this,
Yeah.
they may look at the job description online and say, oh, I'm this. I check these interesting things. But there's so much more nuance to it and intricacies to it that people are looking for off paper attributes and qualities.
That's where
our role comes in.
What you're saying now is so true because so many people experience reading on LinkedIn, for example, a description and say, yeah, exactly like you said, that's me. I can do all that, or my experience is that, it calls my name. And then you actually contact or go, if you get contacted, and once you go and you meet with them, finally, that's why a recruiter is so, I guess, crucial in many, many ways. And then you sit with the people and they say, we actually need something completely different and they forgot or they neglected the fact that they needed to change the description, but they're still recruiting with that old description, or even if it's not that old, it could be 2 or 3 weeks from now. But they already decided that we may need something else because the business has moved to a different direction at the same time. And that is not only I would say, I wouldn't call it misleading, but it's just wasting their own time, right? Trying to focus on that. So how do you come and advise those companies when it comes to that? What type of questions you would get them focus on and understand in order to help them?
Yeah, a couple things to address here. In addition to my spending the majority of my time, well over 90% of my time as a recruiter in their traditional sense, I do spend some time doing executive advisory and working with executives on their job search to coach them. And the one problem that they keep running into before they come to me for help is often the same thing, that I've applied for all these jobs online. I am great for all these jobs online. I meet the job description. I never hear anything back. And I generally tell them that those are real jobs. No one's posting them as part of some exercise or to waste their time.
Right, for fun, yeah.
But the process is flawed. The individual fielding that applicant almost always isn't the hiring manager or stakeholder. So they might not know that nuance that's required in that job. Or the person fielding that job application is so buried in receiving job applications and resumes that they may only have 2 minutes to give a resume consideration when evaluating it. So the process is flawed and short. These are real jobs. I just don't know how good the process is for an executive level person to find it.
Which is a discussion of its own. We recruit people to the HR process. That's the whole topic.
Sure. We can talk about that at length. I do think though, as a recruiter, when we're talking about us representing our clients, it's about knowing the right questions to ask. And it's about making sure that you're probing deeper than the job description into not only the cultural fit of the team that this person will be working on potentially, but also the evaluation of this person's needs. So I like to think that we're pretty darn good at asking the questions that need to be asked at the beginning of a search to our clients. And sometimes we have an enlightenment that they may say, oh, we never thought about that discipline or that attribute. We do want that. We don't want that. Not important in this search. So I think repetition, and here we go, going back to what I said at the very beginning of this conversation, be in the niche, right? Know what's important about real estate placements and real estate professionals. Right. So we know the questions at Hirewell to ask companies before we begin the search process.
Can you give me like two questions that are classic, meaning from your experience, and you have vast experience, that people don't think of when you come to them and said, oh, I didn't think about that. And you say, yeah, that's crucial. That's important. Like two aspects.
What would they be?
Yeah.
Oh, well, the first one's culture. I mean, matching the X's and O's and connecting the dots on a candidate, I don't want to say is the easy part, but it's easier than matching culture. So you need to know who's a stakeholder of this role. What's that person or person's, what's their personality? How is this person going to fit and be aligned with the organization? So that's the number one thing is you got to ask about the culture of the team. You know, will it be one that performance is paramount? Maybe it's a sales role where you don't really care if you mesh personality wise, or they may not prioritize it. They just want the contracts signed. And frankly, the person could get along with their coworkers or not get along with their coworkers. Maybe it is a position on the other side of the coin that they work in closer quarters and people relating and getting along, that maybe it's a project that'll take years on together and it's not quite transactional. And this person's going to be working with the team on a daily basis for years. So it's much more important that the cultural and personas fit. That's probably the most important thing that we like to lead with is how the person's going to fit.
That's so interesting and underrated. I hear it and it sounds so clear. And so many people don't think about it. They just think about the technical aspect. I love that idea. Digging into a little bit of HR, and then we'll go back to the real estate aspect of things. But HR-wise, let's say I'm a company. Where do you think companies make most mistakes? And you just touched it a little bit. You said not enough time to look at the resume, etc. But if you could be more specific about what could companies do in order to do better in that, in the recruiting aspect of their people.
We believe at Hirewell that really talent acquisition, recruiting, employee development is all part of the same process and all part of the same ecosystem. It doesn't end when the person starts their first day of work. And what we've found when we advise clients and companies is you need to focus on that process and make sure you're putting the resources towards that process. Often the default status in organizations is to lean on the HR department, which is almost always stretched thin in advance of this new ask. They're already so stretched thin with compliance issues, documentation issues, onboarding, all the things that go into an HR professional's work day and week, they're already being asked to do. And then often the superiors or the leadership will come to the HR department and say, oh, can you also find me this? So they're trying to, what I found is really get a lot of output in that regard out of HR when they're already asking HR to do so much. So that's probably the biggest thing we've seen.
They're swamped.
They're busy. They're swamped, right?
Yeah. And they can't get to many of the important aspects of recruiting, of actually getting the right people. That's very interesting. Nobody would know it. Nobody would think about that. You know what? Let me ask you a question, and that's probably one of I don't know if it's the last, but I want to get to the end of that and start talking about the aspect of the real estate within that. Sure. When people get recruited and they got, swallowed up into that, swallowed up basically into this process, some people believe that, okay, I'll do it. LinkedIn is great. I'll just apply through LinkedIn. Some people approached me. Some people told me this. Some people told me that. Some people say LinkedIn is just meaning the algorithm is not right. I'm not getting the right offers, or nobody's getting back to me, or whatever.
Mhm.
And some people are more traditional in the way of, I'll do networking. I'll just call my friends. I'll just do the networking, which is maybe people should do both. But I'm saying some people are more focused on that. And one, and they rely on the, I would say, the end introduction of Charlie said that Bob is great for John, and he said, listen, you got to meet that guy. You got to really see, or that girl. You got to see who they are. You got to meet them, and I believe they're great for that. And the personal aspect is a major play here. So, from technology, introductions, personal. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, here's what I advise people. You mentioned going into your own personal and professional network. Most people probably have somewhere between 20 and 40 contacts through their professional network that they know, that they trust, and that frankly is going to put any amount of energy towards helping you. About 30 or 40. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less. And people should begin there. I always say that's the first good step of a job search.
Right.
Then you need to make sure that you are packaging yourself correctly, right? Because when you start to get those interviews and those referrals made on your behalf, you absolutely have to present yourself well. And there's two sides of that. One is the resume. You have to have a very compelling resume that in a short period of time presents you in the best light and captures attention. Second thing is interview skills and preparation. You have to be able to make a very strong first impression, state your case, be able to present why you're a good fit for that particular job. And often people go into an interview trying to present the best version of themselves, the best version of John or Jane Smith. Now that's important, but I always coach my clients, make sure you're the best fit for that job. It's not about you necessarily being the best John or Jane Smith that you can be, but you got to be the best fit for that job. So those are the beginning steps in the process.
Great point.
One, reach out to your network. Two, prepare for a job search. Like any other preparation, make sure your resume is good and your interview coaching skills are good.
So I have a question about that. You have to make yourself great fit for that job. But what if it's a very specific thing, and many times it is, and you have some skills about it, but you're not all you can be about it. You want your integrity to be 100%. You don't want to start talking just in the air. You want to say really what you know, what you don't know, and people appreciate usually people who speak the truth and are they're straightforward, straight shooters. So finding many times what I think is the right match. Like, what do you think about that? Is that the correct way to think of things? It's not correct. You have to fit the job, make yourself fit. What do you think about that?
Any job is a two-way street. Interview is a two-way street. And you can try to shoehorn yourself into a position, but sometimes not to be too, what's the word I'm thinking of? Not to be too holistic about it, but sometimes it's just not the right church for you. It's not the right job for you. And there comes a point in every process, and we deal with it with our candidates on a daily basis. Sometimes you just have to say, this is not a fit. And as recruiters, we have to say that often, a dozen times a day. We have to tell the candidate, look, doesn't mean you're not a good candidate, doesn't mean we don't like working with you and we're not in your corner. Sometimes it's just not a fit. And the candidate has to say that themselves, that when they look at an opportunity, they may say, oh, I could be happy in that organization. I could learn to do that job. But at the end of the day, you have to have a very self-reflective attitude and say, this just isn't the one for me. And when you're in that situation, my advice is make a good impression, tell the company that you acknowledge that too, rather than try to sell them on you being a fit for the job. Say, look, I recognize I'm not a fit for this job. I have a ton of respect for your organization. If there's something that is a better fit for me down the road, I'd love to be considered. I would advise that someone do that rather than try to
Right.
perform a
Push
sales
it.
job.
Yeah.
Don't push it.
Yeah, yeah. 100%. Beautiful advice.
Mhm.
I want to ask you a question that is an interesting aspect, and I'm sure people ask you a lot. What's the most desirable role today that you get nowadays versus, I would say, 3 years ago, and the least desirable versus 3 years ago?
Yeah, I can talk about what's the shift we've seen. We've seen a shift from acquisitions roles to development roles. The adage is with most of my clients now, and especially in those sectors that are hot, industrial, multifamily, that it's more advantageous to build than to buy. So I'm not sure about desirable, but in regards to demand and shifting in demand, that's different than it was 3 years ago. Firms are much more apt to develop. My team and I probably have 10 development jobs for every one acquisitions job right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what type of development, for the most part?
We're working multifamily development right now, self-storage development, industrial development, single-family home for rent development. I feel like a little bit of a broken record. But we have development roles in all of those asset classes.
The one thing that, always, when I always think about people are getting positions within the real estate industry, commercial real estate industry. I would ask this: what people, I would say, move, meaning the shift from one role to another role. What is the most popular shift to move from one role to another role that you tell people, listen, you've been here, but I suggest you to just move from this to that role, and that will be a lot more beneficial for you. So get your skill set to that.
Yeah. We get a lot of candidates who want to shift from either the client service side to the owner side, whether they're in acquisitions or development, providing those services. They want to plant roots and grow with an owner or the investor. That's a natural progression. Now that could be everything from an acquisitions role, a sales or brokerage role, a construction or development role. That's one of the biggest shifts we see, is people wanting to go from a service provider to owner, with the hopes that they could become a cornerstone with the firm, maybe have some equity participation, and maybe some more stability. We see that a bunch.
And tell me, within the development sector, which is the most, I would say, popular type of role today?
Again,
development is big. It's a big word. It's a big word.
Yeah, industrial and multifamily, kind of at the vice president level. In most of the markets around town, around the country, that means kind of a 200 salary base type person, someone who's been doing development for, maybe 11 or 15 years total, or part of an 11 to 15 year career in development. Those types of searches.
Role? What specific role? Overhead, a developer role? Yeah,
director of development, vice president of development. That's a search that we have, I think, 8 or 9 of those right now nationwide that we're leading. We simply cannot get those people quickly enough. And when we do, and when they look good, they get consumed by our hiring companies, hiring clients very quickly.
That sounds very interesting. I'm thinking there's so much, to talk about within that, the world of commercial real estate and the type of roles that you have inside. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about prop tech. Are you dealing with that at all?
Yeah. In fact, we actually have a number of searches with Roofstock right now. One of our clients that we're helping through a number of roles. So yes, we're familiar and active in that space.
So what can you tell us? When did you get into that, and what you needed to learn about that, world in order to go and recruit? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, we're technology is the short answer. We need to learn technology.
Right.
We are lucky here at Hirewell in our real estate team that Hirewell has a tech practice with over a dozen recruiters in it. So we do have subject material experts here at Hirewell to lean on, and that's one of the advantages of Hirewell as a company is we have at least 6 major verticals: HR, IT, accounting and finance. We do the real estate vertical, marketing. So when we get niche searches that come in, yes, we're the real estate team and we'll take the lead on those. But we have dedicated verticals to almost every discipline that someone could be on an ancillary basis involved in real estate. So we have the professionals here at our Hirewell team to bring my real estate team up to speed.
Sounds beautiful. And tell me, which types of companies, when it comes to tech, obviously prop tech, what type of roles you guys are getting from them? Here's who we need. Here's what we need.
Yep. Yeah, we have everything from sales and brokerage roles to programmers to asset management.
Oh, wow.
To finance folks. So kind of all, again, full range.
Full range.
But of late we've been real busy with we have a number of managing broker and broker front door sort of salespeople roles that we're working on right now.
Very, very interesting. We could go all day long with this. It's so interesting. It's such an interesting topic, and there's so many challenges / opportunities that are happening today. And you know what? I met with few people in the commercial real estate industry, meaning lately, and some of them said, "Listen, it's the hottest market. People are hiring left and right." And some of them are telling me it's like it's not what it used to be. It's different. What do you think about that?
Well, it's changing. I mean, the demand for people right now is probably accelerating that change. One of the things that we've tried to do here at Hirewell to stay ahead of the curve is to market the searches a little bit differently. Is to get out of the path, if you will. Most of the searches that I've seen in 9 years of this business are conducted the same way. Some of them are more confidential than they need to be and are less well marketed. Now, certainly there are need for job searches to have some level of discretion and confidentiality to them, but not all of them. And the traditional mode and method of recruiting sometimes creates a longer, more drawn out process for the client, for the hiring organization. The hiring organization doesn't really care that the recruiters need to take all these steps to protect the discretion and confidentiality of the recruiter. Now,
Right.
If it's a sensitive job, of course, we take those steps. Other firms take those steps. But for the majority of jobs out there, and I use the rule of thumb that if you can put that job post online, then you should probably market the role a different way, because the only cost being paid is by the client company in delaying or having the process delayed because a recruiter wants to control the search so much to take all these steps. And that's why if any of your viewers or listeners takes a look at us on LinkedIn, you'll see probably a good 30 to 40% of our searches will tell the world right away, Hirewell is working with company X for this job in this location. And my clients, the companies, really like it because I get them candidates in a much shorter time frame. I get the word out to the market about the job. I can get between all of our first connections and followers and candidates in our database, I can get, no exaggeration, 80,000 sets of eyeballs on a job in an afternoon, where other recruiters go through some of their steps that don't bear that fruit. So we believe in marketing a little bit differently, and it's been successful for us. We built a strong client base, and our clients really like it because we're able to maintain that same quality of candidate. But I think we do it a lot quicker than our competitors do now, because we don't waste our time with the steps that other recruiters waste their time with on searches that can be wide open.
Tell me something. I'm sure you get this question all the time.
Mhm.
What is the salary range when it comes to what you do? Meaning in terms of the people that you come, there's salary range from the very low to the very top, and the
You mean-
difference in salary range between those, more family offices, private companies, and the larger companies. What is the entry and what is the highest? What should people think when they think of a career path in this industry?
For a job like ours?
No, not like you, like the people that you interview, like in the industry.
Well, again, it's really more job specific. If you're talking about, we'll just go from the bottom up.
Okay.
If you're talking about property managers, analysts, and project managers, which is about 20% of our business, those people in this market are now 90,000 to 110,000 base jobs is where our business kind of begins. Then what we've seen a lot of comp models for the vice president level and director type level person. We've seen a bunch of positions in the 180 to 200 base range, but incentives are key. You start getting into that spot in a career arc, you start having incentives, bonuses, comps, ownership, piece of the promote. All of that gets more sophisticated.
Equity, yeah.
Yes. Then you get up to C-suite searches, which again are about a quarter of our business. Now you're talking about bases beginning in the high twos, up to 3. We have 4 or 5 searches like that now. But then again, the promote, the equity is all really is paramount to the salary. It becomes a bigger piece.
Right. And that was very, very insightful. How many years are you in it?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, again, I got 9 years in. As we talked to earlier, I'm 48 years old. I'm going to do this another 20 years at least. I enjoy meeting people every day. I enjoy that each day is a little bit like a treasure hunt.
Right.
You have a mission for the day, and you're trying to find that
amazing,
that
huh?
person. So it's
Incredible
exciting.
how much it is.
Yeah,
And it's all about people.
100%. 100%. We do things that a computer can't do.
Exactly. And how many people do you guys have in your company?
My team is 7. My real estate team is 7. At last count, I know Hirewell just surpassed 90 recruiters.
Wow.
Yeah, Hirewell was founded roughly 22 years ago by our current CEO and leader, Matt Masucci, a gentleman that I actually went to college with, so I've known Matt for a while. So when I brought my team and my business over to his platform about 2.5 years ago, it was a real comfortable transition for me and my team.
Beautiful. And where are you guys based?
Hirewell is based out of Chicago. My real estate team is based here in Dallas.
Nice. Sounds like you guys have action all over the place, and especially nowadays with whatever is happening, it's exciting stuff. And listen, it was exciting. We learned a lot. I could talk another 2 hours about this,
Right.
but
Right.
this is really interesting and very, very cool. So first of all, I wish you success with everything you do and wherever you go. And obviously, you guys listening, whether you are recruiting or you are seeking or you want to get to know this whole thing better, the industry and what type of career path you want, whatever you are, I suggest that you go back and listen because we learned tons in this one. Check out the links above and below to reach out to Jim. Jim, please tell us how people can find you.
Well, I have about the easiest email address in the world, jim@hirewell.com. I mentioned it in all my videos and all my emails, and there is nothing in life. This is my career advice, free nugget for everyone. Get an easy email address, because when you're talking to people on the phone or in passing at a convention and you run out of business cards, to have an email like jim@hirewell.com, it's a godsend.
I love it. And you guys can check out the links and learn about what Jim does and the opportunities that are out there. And Jim, thank you so much for being with us. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks very much. And I'll end my portion with my famous or infamous tagline that when it's time to hire, it's time to hire well. Thanks.
I love it. I love it. It's great. It's great. And you guys heard that, and I hope you learned tons, and I'm going to see